Hi there, welcome to Nighttime Line Talks. Tonight we are receiving a story on the one President Donald Trump signed an executive action to basically control the social networks in the United States. This story is an endless story in my personal point of view because, as you heard many times, President Trump loves Twitter to express his points of view. So, President says days ago that he wants to not control, because this is not a censorship. What he wants basically is a limitation on protections for the companies of social networks. Basically, the protections are going to be determined along this week after he signed this executive order, but the story is on progress. So before we start this program, we have just some headlines from Fox News and from New York Times. And then Fox News is telling that an interview with Jeff Zuckerberg, the owner and CEO of Facebook and owner of several companies of social networks. He has the monopoly on social networks. He's considering that the polemic is a battle of ideas, is the way he sees it, according to the Fox News report. And also he summarized the problems with China and Hong Kong. Why I mix the situation of the social networks with Jeff Zuckerberg and Hong Kong? Well, Jeff Zuckerberg is married with a nice Asian lady. So Zuckerberg is very concerned about the way they manage the social networks in China, and many experts start to talk that Hong Kong is becoming the battlefield for the United States and China. Yes, because people in Hong Kong do not agree with the Chinese measures, do not agree with what's going on there. And President Trump is using Twitter and Facebook. In both of them has more than 9 million followers. So he is making opinions that he disappoints with the voting system on mail. He says that the people vote receiving the poll and filling up and sending excuse me and sending the answer of the ballot, casting the vote by regular mail. He believes that it can be mismanaged, manipulated, and he is talking about that voting on mail is only for elderly people, for people who can't walk, who is recovering from a surgery, but not for everyone. And if the pandemic is the objection, well, people can respect the social distance, use the mouth covers, and go to vote in scheduled times of the day. Fortunately, there are voting advance days in many cities of the United States. So that is not an objection anymore to people go and cast their vote. Now, The polemic issue is that Twitter is a private company and they are ruled by the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, any social network that you imagine, meanwhile, is in the territory of the United States, is ruled for the First Amendment of the Constitution. That means that there is freedom of thinking, freedom of talking, freedom of writing, any point of view people believes is the point of view, very personal, institutional, whatever, is free to be expressed. So many situations are coming on in regard of the manipulation of the political campaigns that are around the corner for this November 2020, and many situations that people is expressing that the Democrats says that President Trump is trying to censorship social networks. Republicans are expressing that President Trump is trying to make a discipline on the social networks to avoid manipulation and many offensive language, many racial slurs that happening sometimes. Facebook and YouTube, they have people screening the messages to avoid situations like it, especially slurs. I saw many things people put and upload, and other followers add more comments, and the point is becoming worst. So many experts on mass media consider that internet is losing credibility, and it is because there is no respect for others. Many people, probably you and me, we make mistakes and we express it in an appropriate word or express a misunderstanding concept of something, and we fall into that situation. And that is a very valid point of President Trump, and it is a very valid point of Democrats, and it is a very valid point of Jeff Zuckerberg. What's going on? Trump tried to bring discipline to social networks. Jeff Zuckerberg liked to be fair and is asking people, don't be offensive and don't manipulate political language and messages. Democrats are expressing that the First Amendment on the Constitution is the freedom of speech, the freedom of thinking that is happening in the Constitution of the United States. So everybody is expressing their own point of view. And here is just arriving a note from President Trump in Fox News that says they put the headline censorship fight and announced that President Trump signs a social media executive orders, calls for removal of liability protections because of censorship. Ari Fleischer, Twitter foolish move proved how dumb they can be. Boy, did Jack Dorsey step in it, says Ari Fleischer, reacting to Trump's expressed executive order targeting social media companies. So, the President Trump gave a speech flanked by the Attorney General, Bill Barr, and Trump announced his executive order in the Oval Office today, Thursday, that is calling under new regulation, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act that becomes since 1996. The CDA is calling to remove statutory liability protections for tech companies that engage in censorship and political conduct. My executive order calls for new regulations under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act to make it so that social media companies that engage in censorship any political conduct will not be able to keep their liability shield, said President Trump. My executive order further instructs the Federal Trade Commission to prohibit social media companies from engaging in deceptive acts or practices affecting commerce. This commerce resides in Section 5 of the Federal Trade Commission Act. Under the CDA, platforms are ordinarily not liable for users' defamatory or otherwise problematic posts under the CDA, while publishers that actively shape content do face liability. Trump's order will empower the federal government to interpret and apply that legislation. The choices that Twitter makes when it chooses to suppress, edit, blacklist, shadow ban are editorial decisions, pure and simple, Trump says, adding, in those moments, Twitter ceases to be neutral public platform and they become an editor with a viewpoint. And, like last year, at the middle of last year, social networks, Twitter, announced that they will not take political ads anymore for politicians because they damage the content and they are manipulative. Keep in mind that President Trump did his campaign on social networks on 2016. He get a lot of followers due the social networks. Basically, he is one of the world leaders with more followers worldwide. President Trump disappointed with some regulations to stop politics, and also he disappoints with some comments from people. And I saw some of the comments, honestly. People goes beyond. Let me tell you, just few samples without give details. President Trump has a family, as I have it, as you have it, as anyone have it, a nice family that we love. Well, some liberals start to make comments to the person of the First Lady and to the person of President Trump's son, that is a nice kid. And I have a rule. The family, for me, is holy. We have to see family as the holiness. Sorry for the comparison with the Pope and some church leaders. But it's important to respect every detail about family, of any politician, of any person, of anyone. We can make judgments and comments about some politicians, questioning their actions because they are public figures. They are public domain people. Do they live of the budget from the taxes you and me pay? But family has nothing to do. The first lady is just the wife of the president, and she's trying to help, and she never open the mouth, and she never do anything that offend the people. And the kid, come on, he's a young kid. Please respect him. When I saw the comments they did, oh my goodness, I felt very frustrated, and I told to myself that in sometimes some people, especially some journalists, abuse of this freedom of speech, take advantage of that freedom of thinking we have from the First Amendment, that the Constitution gives us the right to express our ideas, feelings, thinking, whatever. So this broadcast is an invitation to many of you to make an introspection, and don't just judge people for comments of thirds. That is blackmail. No, go and listen people and meet people directly, and you don't have to make your profile from somebody else using the adjectives and comments another person is doing. That is the best way to express your freedom, to express your thinking, and you don't give tools to others to manipulate your thinking and the concepts about their people, about leaders, about anyone. And that happens too much in the United States, in Mexico, in many countries. And some journalists try to use that comments to influence people. Yes, when there is facts that justify the comments, yes, I judge, I check what's going on. But when there is not facts and comments from thirds, there is no reason to judge excuse me, somebody. So every day we come to this platform to analyze, not to judge. And the analysis has to be fair, based in facts, many facts that make the opinion more solid, make the opinion balanced. On Newsfield, recently with the social networks, there is a phenomenon called by some experts the transmedia effect. This transmedia effect is the way regular mass media, television, radio, newspapers, go into the social networks and combine their content on these social networks to express all the content they have, analysis, points of view, news, videos, etc. And then the social networks are the platform that expands and maintains the presence of that traditional media, the mainstream media, on the digital platforms. And it's happening very often. For example, the Chicago Tribune fired all their photographers, but they are still printing the newspaper. They fired the photographers to reduce costs, The cost was very expensive to keep photographers for every section on the newspaper. And guess what they are doing? They are taking pictures from the social networks from every event to publish on the newspaper. And they have a club of photographers that take pictures and videos with their cellular phone that become very popular. And if you see the newscast every night, many newscasts have videos from social media, from YouTube, from your neighbor, from somebody else. They don't have videos and pictures from professional photographers anymore, because it's impossible to have a photographer in every place of this story. So the smart idea of the Chicago Tribune reduced a lot of money. The next step is do journalism classes on the newspaper between neighbors associations, citizens, etc., and make a club of contributors. These contributors write stories about something they saw, something they experienced, and they make a story for the newspaper, and the newspaper publish. So the way news media is changing is fast. In fact, many colleges and many universities have already the class of digital media. They have years and years teaching digital media. And they express at the beginning the difference between analog television and digital television. But now, I am baby boomer, but now my kid is a millennial, and millennials, they don't care about the analog television because they don't know those big televisions, black and white in color, with a huge cathodic tube that comes through the end and say the basic colors, cyan, yellow, or magenta. I don't remember exactly the colors. And the combination of it form any color on the screen. Now, there are flat screens with a better resolution, better definition, and we don't have to have heavy TV screens everywhere. In Tokyo, Japan, when I visit the section where the stock market is located, all the street has a lot of flat screens advising the current stocks, the ups and downs. And investors and brokers and many people, when they go to lunch, they are very alert in checking their index, how it is going. So television is something that is changing our lives. In fact, with the new technology, you can change your window into a screen, television screen. You can change a table into computer screen, huge, and it can be touch screen. You touch with your fingers and you move objects and pages, open and close, check videos, check many things. And it's already going on. In fact, I was telling you in yesterday's chapter that they have to cancel the launch of the new shuttle to go to the space as a test so many days, many weeks, and doing orbit with the Earth and goes close to the International Station, etc. Well, guess what? It doesn't have switches anymore on the boards. Has small screens, and from Like if they are a touchpad and from there they control everything inside. They control connections with Earth, they control weather, speed, whatever they have to check, start engines, change directions, many things. And condensation is not affecting the circuits anymore, like happens with Apollo 13 and other experiences. Astronauts have some failures on their trips or attempts to go to space. So everything is coming in a different way. Everything is going to be improved in order to have a better results. But at the end of the day, the final product is the same. Go to the moon surface, go to Mars. And for example, the other day I was listening. If one of the space shuttles goes to the moon, and on the load area they can carry a container, regular size container. If they fill that container with a moon dust and bring back to the Earth, they have enough material to power New York City for 3 years, I guess. So that is the interest of keep going way back to the space race. It's unbelievable because the United States was 10 years absent. And they have other periods of absency after the Challenger explosion and many things. But they never give up. They are trying new ways and improving technologies to come back in a better way, in a better technology. And I hope this coming Saturday, I'll be sticking my nose to the screen to watch this launch. Even I am 7 hours driving to the Kennedy Space Center, but I am tired of driving, honestly. It's a long way, and if my son don't have time to go, I don't like to go alone. So I take a rain check for other launch, and I am sure after this first test, the Kennedy Space Center is going back to business, and they are going to be very happy coming back to the crowds where they sell stuff, where they allow people to visit the museum and see many things, movies. Oh, it's every time I go to the Kennedy Space Center, I really enjoy it. I love it. And it's one of my favorite places to go. I visit also other space stations or space cities like Huntsville, Alabama. It is huge too, and they have a park with many of the rockets outside, and they explain the story one by one. It's nice, it's cool. I was telling you yesterday about when I took my son the first time to the Kennedy Space Center. I had the opportunity, thanks to a friend, to visit the International Space Station when they were putting together. I passed by the middle and see people putting the switches and everything. It was a special tour because we have a friend who works on NASA, who is a wonderful person, and I'm not going to mention her name, and her husband is pilot of NASA. And thank you. We really have a good time. And tonight I want to sign off with couple things. We have to maintain the freedom of journalism, freedom of speech, freedom to express our ideas with respect, without affect, and use racial slurs, because I suffered too much from people who use it. I've been a victim of racial slurs. And we can express many things. We can give many ideas free with respect. And let's go to see how this initiative from President Trump is taken by Congress, by senators, and for the rest of the world. And tonight we expect an answer from the people who leads the social media. Thank you so much, and see you tomorrow. Have a good night.